Today we're taking a trip back in time to explore 8 weird things from the 1970s that were illegal. The 70s were a time of vibrant change, but also of some strange and surprising laws. Let's dive in and see what made the list. Number 1. Connecting to the internet without permission. During the 1970s, the concept of the internet was in its nascent stages, far from the global network we are familiar with today. It was a time when computers were bulky, expensive machines primarily used by large institutions and government agencies. The idea of interconnected computers exchanging information was revolutionary, but still confined to academic and military circles. Despite its limited reach, the early internet was subject to strict regulation and control. Access to computer networks was tightly monitored, and unauthorized entry was considered a serious offense. This was primarily due to concerns about security and the potential for unauthorized access to sensitive information. In the absence of user-friendly interfaces and widespread connectivity, connecting to the internet required technical expertise and often explicit permission. Individuals or organizations attempting to access networks without proper authorization risked legal consequences, including fines and even imprisonment in extreme cases. Moreover, the infrastructure supporting early networking was rudimentary compared to today's standards. Physical connections were established through dedicated lines and terminals, with limited bandwidth and capacity. Each connection was carefully managed and allocated, with priority given to authorized users. The regulations surrounding internet access during the 1970s reflected broader societal concerns about privacy, security, and intellectual property. As computer technology advanced and the internet expanded its reach in the following decades, these concerns would continue to shape the evolving landscape of cyberspace. Number 2. Jumping off buildings. In the era preceding stringent safety regulations, the 1970s witnessed a rise in daredevil activities, with thrill-seekers often pushing the limits of their physical abilities in pursuit of adrenaline-fueled excitement. Among these daring stunts, jumping off buildings emerged as a particularly perilous endeavor. The allure of leaping from towering structures captivated many enthusiasts, drawn by the thrill of defying gravity and experiencing an unparalleled rush of adrenaline. However, such acts were not without their dangers, as the potential consequences of miscalculation or mishap could be catastrophic. Recognizing the inherent risks posed by this reckless behavior, authorities took proactive measures to safeguard public safety by enacting laws prohibiting jumping off buildings. These regulations aimed to deter individuals from engaging in high-risk activities that endangered both their lives and the well-being of others. The rationale behind these laws was clear: to prevent accidents, injuries, and fatalities resulting from falls from significant heights. In densely populated urban areas, where tall buildings were a prominent feature of the landscape, the potential for disaster was particularly acute. Moreover, the absence of safety measures such as guardrails, harnesses, or protective equipment further heightened the dangers associated with jumping off buildings. Without proper precautions in place, the likelihood of tragic outcomes was significantly increased. While some thrill seekers may have viewed jumping off buildings as an exhilarating expression of freedom and adventure, the reality was far grimmer. Each leap carried with it the very real possibility of injury or death, not only for the jumper, but also for bystanders below. Number 3. Hanging obstructions from the rearview mirror. During the 1970s, car customization emerged as a widespread trend, with enthusiasts eager to personalize their vehicles and showcase their unique style on the road. From flashy paint jobs to sleek modifications, drivers embraced the opportunity to transform their cars into reflections of their personalities. However, not all modifications were met with enthusiasm by authorities. One particular practice that drew regulatory scrutiny was the hanging of obstructions from the rearview mirror. While seemingly innocuous, items such as air fresheners, decorative ornaments, or fuzzy dice posed potential hazards that caught the attention of lawmakers. The primary concern driving the prohibition of hanging obstructions from the rearview mirror was the risk of obstructed visibility and distracted driving. In a decade marked by increasing traffic congestion and growing concerns about road safety, maintaining a clear field of vision was paramount for drivers navigating busy streets and highways. Objects dangling from the rearview mirror could obscure essential sightlines, hindering a driver's ability to monitor surrounding traffic and react swiftly to changing road conditions. Even seemingly small obstructions could create blind spots or distort reflections, posing significant safety risks for both the driver and others on the road. Moreover, the allure of decorative items dangling from the mirror could prove distracting, diverting the driver's attention away from the task of driving and increasing the likelihood of accidents. Lawmakers sought to curb this potential distraction by enacting regulations aimed at prohibiting the hanging of obstructions that could compromise driver visibility and focus. Number 4. Playing pinball if under 18. During the vibrant arcade culture of the 1970s, pinball machines stood as iconic fixtures in entertainment venues across the globe. Their flashing lights, ringing bells, and fast-paced gameplay captivated players of all ages, providing hours of amusement and excitement. However, in certain jurisdictions, minors found themselves barred from participating in this beloved pastime. The decision to restrict minors from playing pinball stemmed from concerns among authorities about the potential negative effects of excessive gameplay on young minds. The dynamic nature of pinball, with its rapid movements and sensory stimuli, led some to worry that prolonged exposure could cultivate addictive behaviors and contribute to juvenile delinquency. By imposing age restrictions on pinball gameplay, lawmakers sought to mitigate these perceived risks and protect minors from the supposed dangers of excessive gaming. While proponents of the regulations argued that such measures were necessary to safeguard the well-being of young people, critics contended that they represented an overreach of government authority and infringed upon personal freedoms. Despite the controversy surrounding age restrictions, pinball enthusiasts of all ages continued to flock to arcades and gaming establishments to indulge in their passion for the silver ball. For minors, however, the allure of the pinball machine was tinged with the frustration of being excluded from a cherished pastime due to arbitrary age limitations. Number 5. Spitting on the sidewalk. In response to concerns about hygiene and sanitation, ordinances were enacted in many municipalities to prohibit behaviors deemed unsanitary, including spitting on the sidewalk. While seemingly innocuous, spitting on the sidewalk was viewed as a significant public health hazard, capable of spreading diseases and contaminating public spaces. Saliva, when expelled onto sidewalks or other surfaces, could serve as a vector for pathogens, posing risks to public health and well-being. To combat the spread of disease and uphold sanitation standards, authorities took decisive action to outlaw spitting on the sidewalk. Offenders caught violating these ordinances faced penalties ranging from fines to potential arrest, underscoring the seriousness with which authorities approached this seemingly minor infraction. Beyond the immediate health concerns, the prohibition of spitting on the sidewalk also reflected broader societal values and expectations regarding public behavior and civility. By outlawing this unsanitary practice, cities sought to promote a sense of community pride and responsibility for maintaining clean and hygienic public spaces. While some may have viewed these regulations as overly strict or unnecessary, the rationale behind them was rooted in a genuine commitment to protecting public health and well-being. By curbing the spread of disease and upholding sanitation standards, authorities aim to create safer and more livable environments for residents and visitors alike. Number 6. Feeding pigeons. Feeding pigeons, a seemingly innocent and often charming activity, came under scrutiny and regulation in various places during the 1970s. Despite the picturesque image of people scattering breadcrumbs for the birds in public squares or parks, authorities saw pigeon feeding as more than just a quaint pastime. It was considered a nuisance with potential health and environmental implications. From the perspective of municipal authorities, pigeon feeding created several problems. Firstly, it attracted large flocks of birds, leading to overcrowding and competition for food resources. This overcrowding often resulted in aggressive behavior among pigeons, posing risks to both humans and other wildlife in the vicinity. Additionally, the abundance of food provided by pigeon feeding encouraged the proliferation of pests such as rats and mice, drawn to the area by the promise of easy meals. This influx of vermin not only exacerbated existing sanitation issues, but also posed health hazards to residents and visitors alike. Moreover, the accumulation of bird droppings resulting from excessive pigeon feeding created unsightly and unhygienic conditions in public spaces. Pigeon droppings contain harmful pathogens and can contribute to the deterioration of buildings and infrastructure, further underscoring the need for measures to control pigeon populations. To address these concerns, laws were enacted to prohibit pigeon feeding in certain areas, with offenders facing fines or other penalties for non-compliance. While some may have viewed these regulations as harsh or unnecessary, they were intended to mitigate the negative impacts of excessive pigeon feeding on public health, sanitation, and urban aesthetics. Although feeding pigeons may evoke sentiments of nostalgia or compassion for these ubiquitous urban birds, the regulation of this activity during the 1970s reflects broader efforts to balance human activities with the preservation of public spaces and the well-being of communities. As cities continue to grapple with issues related to urban wildlife management, the regulation of pigeon feeding serves as a reminder of the complex interactions between humans and the environment in urban settings. Number 7. Barking dogs. In the bustling neighborhoods of the 1970s, amid the hustle and bustle of urban life, excessive noise disturbances emerged as a significant source of frustration for residents. Among the cacophony of sounds that often plagued residential areas, barking dogs stood out as a particularly persistent and disruptive nuisance. The incessant barking of dogs could disrupt the tranquility of neighborhoods, disturb residents' peace of mind, and even affect their quality of life. Whether triggered by passing pedestrians, other animals, or simply out of boredom or anxiety, the relentless barking of dogs could reverberate through the streets, causing annoyance and irritation to those within earshot. To address the issue of noisy pets, including barking dogs, authorities took action by enacting laws and regulations aimed at curbing excessive vocalizations. These laws typically required pet owners to take reasonable measures to control their animals' barking behavior and minimize disturbances to their neighbors. Owners who failed to adequately address their pets' barking could face fines or other penalties for disturbing the peace. In extreme cases, persistent violations of noise ordinances could even result in legal action or the removal of the offending animal from the premises. While many pet owners undoubtedly cherished their furry companions, they were also expected to be considerate of their neighbors and mindful of the impact their pet's behavior had on the community. Responsible pet ownership entailed not only providing for the well-being of their animals, but also ensuring that they did not become sources of annoyance or disruption to others. The regulation of barking dogs during the 1970s reflected broader efforts to balance the rights and responsibilities of pet owners with the needs and expectations of the wider community. By addressing the issue of excessive noise disturbances in residential neighborhoods, authorities sought to promote harmonious living environments where residents could enjoy peace and quiet in their own homes. Number 8. Using silly string. In the whimsical world of the 1970s, silly string emerged as a popular novelty item, beloved for its playful and entertaining properties. This colorful aerosol foam, when sprayed, would instantly transform into long, stringy strands, delighting users of all ages with its amusing antics. However, despite its innocent appeal, silly string found itself entangled in a web of regulatory scrutiny and restrictions. The decision to regulate silly string stemmed from concerns about littering and environmental damage caused by its use in public spaces. As the popularity of this novelty item grew, so too did the instances of its misuse, with users often spraying it indiscriminately in parks, streets, and other outdoor areas. The result was a mess of stringy residue littering the landscape, creating eyesores and contributing to environmental degradation. To combat this issue, authorities took decisive action to ban the use of silly string in public spaces, enacting strict regulations and penalties for offenders. Those caught spraying silly string in prohibited areas could face fines or even charges of vandalism, underscoring the seriousness with which authorities regarded this seemingly innocuous activity. While some may have viewed these regulations as overly restrictive or unnecessary, they were intended to protect public spaces and promote responsible behavior among users of silly string. By enforcing restrictions on its use, authorities aim to mitigate the negative impacts of littering and environmental damage while preserving the cleanliness and aesthetic appeal of public areas.